And welcome once again to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me as always is Juan, Zarate, our national security analyst. He's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he's doing a little teaching at Harvard. Juan, good to see you.
Good to see you through the camera, Bob.
Let's talk a little bit about an event that happened in China. We tend to think of terrorism as being kind of a Middle East problem. It's been an American problem. We don't tend to think of terrorism coming to China. Tell me what happened there.
Well, what you had was a vicious knife attack perpetrated by multiple actors in a train station in the southern part of China. The Chinese have called this an act of terror. They've wanted the U.S. to label it as such. But it's the latest episode of violence that appears to be terrorism. I would stress appears in China, tied to separatist movements as well as the Uyghur Muslim minority. We've yet to learn more details about the perpetrators in this attack, so I don't want to cast judgment on this particular instance. But it's reflective of a broader problem the Chinese have of instability and a fear of growing terrorist tension, both internally and fueled from abroad. And as China becomes a greater economic and world power with presence in the Middle East, places like the Sudan and the Gulf, they start to become more and more of a target for global terrorists. And I think the Chinese are very wary of that. And the instance, both in the train station and the attack we saw in Beijing just a couple of months ago, are maybe the canaries in the coal mine for a greater problem that the Chinese are going to see in the coming years.
Explain to me, why does it matter to the Chinese that the West acknowledges this as a terrorist attack? Why does that make any difference at all?
Well, the Chinese want that recognition for a couple of reasons. One, they want to legitimate the crackdowns and the enforcement actions and counterterrorism activity that they have to engage in, both in the South and in particular in the West. And they don't like the criticism, especially from human rights voices, that comes from some of those crackdowns. And so having the label of terrorism attached to these acts and some of these groups in the minds of China gives greater legitimacy for their crackdowns and actions. In addition, they want broader global recognition that the problems that they face, in particular from groups like the East Turkmenistan Islamic Movement, ETIM, actually form part of this broader global terrorist movement and problem. And so they want that kind of recognition and legitimacy. And absent that, they feel like there's a double standard in the West. I had to deal with this all the time when I was at the Treasury and the White House with the Chinese, pleading and asking for recognition that some of these groups be labeled as terrorist groups or tied to al-Qaeda. It's very important to Chinese officials.
What would be China's likely response here? How are they handling this? I mean, in this country after 9/11, we saw how much money we spent, how many resources we moved. What's China doing? Because it doesn't seem like they would be shy about going after these radicals.
Well, they're not shy at all, and they're not shy about going after the spectrum of separatists, radicals, terrorists. In some ways, for the Chinese, the labels don't matter. If there's any threat to the state, they're going to go after them. The problem here, of course, is you've got incredibly violent acts and potentially actors tied to broader movements and ideologies, which is really a threat to the Chinese state. And so they're going to crack down. But they realize, too, this is a long-term problem, Bob. This is about stability in the West. This is about a significant minority population and movements that are embedded in them and that can affect that stability in the West. And so for them, this isn't just a matter of going after particular cells or individuals or stopping the next attack. It's about dealing with what they consider to be a potentially restive and unstable part of their country that threatens stability and the state.
All right, well, terrorism's not limited to any one continent or any one region. We clearly see that. Juan, thanks as always.
Thank you, Bob.
And thanks to you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you again next time.